Hey, what's up guys? Weekly Light here, and today I'm going to be doing some damage per second calculations in Destiny 2. So there's been a lot of talk about Coldheart being the best exotic to use against Callus in the raid. However, it's getting a lot of competition from Sweet Business. Well, I don't have Sweet Business, so I can't compare it to Sweet Business, but I will compare it to the Prosecutor, the Ghost Primus, and the Mida Mini Tool. All of these weapons are full auto, and I believe that they could give you some insight into how much better the Coldheart is than its legendary counterparts. I've seen a lot of people test damage on Callus, because Callus does have a damage number after you wipe. However, one part of the Callus fight that's really inconsistent is the Force of Will buff. I'm pretty sure Dado will find a way to get around it because he has a raid team, but I have no raid teams and I can't get to Callus solo. Therefore, I decided to test on a Fallen Walker. The legs are big crit spots and are pretty hard to miss, so that's why I chose them. However, I do not know if the Fallen Walkers do have any special properties that cause the damage to round weirdly, or put a damage cap on the numbers. However, from the numbers that I've seen, it seems pretty accurate with the archetypes. Also, the light levels, or power levels for my weapons were all around 290, give or take like plus or minus 3 light. So I don't believe the light will factor in too much here. And I believe public events aren't scaled, or it doesn't take into account your light level if you're that much above them. It shouldn't make a difference, but it might, so just keep an eye out for that. Okay, so now let's get to the numbers. So the Prosecutor has a rate of fire of 450 rounds per minute, a magazine of 32, and a reload of 1.9 seconds. I tested that myself. The reload I calculated based off of footage, and it's from the moment I was holding down the right trigger, from the moment that the last bullet got shot to the next bullet got shot after the reload happens. So that's basically assuming that you're just firing as fast as you can. And on the Fallen Walker, it dealt 59 damage. The Ghost Primus had a rate of fire of 600 rounds per minute, a magazine of 44, a reload of 1.77 seconds, and its damage ranged from 48 to 50. Because it has a perk that increases its damage towards the end of the mag. The Mida Mini Tool has a rate of fire of 900, and it has a magazine size of 37. It has a reload speed of 2.15 seconds, and it dealt a consistent damage of 42 damage. The Coldheart, it says it has a rate of fire of 1000, but from my testing, it seems to be capped out at 900. This might be console limitations, so on PC you might be able to hit that 1000 rounds per minute, but I believe on Xbox One at least it cannot exceed 900 rounds per minute. This might be due to frame rounding and how Destiny 2 is capped out at 30 frames per second. It has a whopping 101 rounds in one magazine, or clip, or I don't, you know what, space clip. Anyway, and it has a reload of 2.2 seconds. And the damage ramps up from 21 to 37. So now that the stats are out of the way, let's get to the calculations. So I'll go one gun at a time with the Coldheart save for last. So the Prosecutor, the slowest firing weapon, dealt a total of 1,888 damage in an interval of 4.27 seconds, which gives it a damage per second of 443 max. But if you account for the reload time, it goes down to 306 damage per second. The final damage per second calculation is a little weird, so what I did was I took a 30-second interval, because it's just an arbitrary amount. It seems like that's the standard Destiny damage phase, just 30 seconds. So in 30 seconds you can get 5 magazines off, and then you can stop damaging, then reload later. So with that system, it takes you up to 326 damage per second, which is slightly better than the reload damage per second, but significantly worse than the ideal damage per second. So for the Ghost Primus, it dealt 2,138 damage in an interval of 4.4 seconds. The way I calculated the damage is the first 24 shots dealt 48 damage, the next 14 dealt 49, and then the final 6 dealt 50. So this is just from me counting the numbers, and my counting may be off, but that should only skew it plus or minus 5 damage. So that would lead the DPS to be 486 damage per second. 347 if you account for the reload, and then you can get 5 magazines off, and then skip the last reload for 368 damage per second, which is about 40 better than the Prosecutor. Now for the Mida Mini Tool. The Mida Mini Tool dealt 1,554 damage in an interval of 2.47 seconds. That would lead to a damage per second of 630 damage per second. However, if you account for the reload, which is almost as long as the time you're firing, then it goes down to only 336 damage per second. And then you can get 7 mags off in 30 seconds and skip the final reload to get you up to 363 damage per second. And then we get to the Coldheart. So the Coldheart's really interesting because it has the ramping up damage. So what I got was the first 22 shots are 21 damage. And then the next 22 shots range from 22 to 36, so I just averaged it to 29. It says exponential, but I'm going with a linear scale for the benefit of the doubt, and then just taking the average integral over that area, which would give you 29. I know it's a really rough estimate, but it's close enough. An exponential scale would actually give it less damage than the linear scale that I'm giving it. And then the last 57 shots deal 37 damage, which is the damage cap for it. This all adds up to a whopping 3,209 damage for the magazine, or clip, or space, Omelon, like fluid thingy, and then over 6.7 seconds for a damage per second of 479 damage per second. If you account for the reload, it goes down to 361 damage per second. And for the 30-second interval I chose, it can get off 3.5 magazines because it will get cut off in that final 30 seconds due to how big its mag is compared to its reload speed. So that means it can't actually fully ramp up on the final mag in 30 seconds, which drops its DPS down to 365 damage per second, which is only 4 damage per second better than its minimum damage per second accounting for reloads. So I know I threw a whole lot of numbers at you guys, so now we'll get to the comparisons. So in regards to just total damage for the magazine, Coldheart wins by a long shot, then next comes Ghost Premise, then the Prosecutor, then the Mida Mini Tool. However, for just one magazine's damage per second, it goes the Mida Mini Tool has the highest damage per second at 630, then it goes the Ghost Premise at 486, then the Coldheart at 479, and then finally is the Prosecutor and last at 443 damage per second. However, once you factor in the reloads, Coldheart soars to the top with its 361 damage per second, followed by Ghost Premise with 347, then Mida Mini Tool with 336, and then the Prosecutor with 306 is last. This big switch up is because the Mida Mini Tool spends about as much time reloading as it does shooting, while the Coldheart spends about 3 times as much time shooting than it is reloading. However, when you go to the 30-second test, which is just some arbitrary time amount I pulled out of my butt, then it changes up a little. The Ghost Premise then takes the lead because in 5 magazines it can get 368 damage per second, which is actually 3 better than the Coldheart's 365 damage per second, which is 2 better than Mida Mini Tool's 363 damage per second, and those are all way better than the Prosecutor's 326 damage per second. So the moral of the story here is that I probably made some math errors and there's some rounding errors, but they're all pretty close together for that 30-second interval. So you're not going to be landing all your shots, you're not going to be landing all crits, but you should not be using the Prosecutor. Just use whatever I would say use the Ghost Premise if you want to use another exotic, but the Coldheart is not especially like super better than everything else, especially if you have to account for the ramp up time, right? So next time you're in a raid and they require you to use your Coldheart to damage Callus, just show them this video and show them that the Ghost Premise and the Mida Mini Tool are actually, pretty close in damage per second against this Fallen Walker. I don't know if it applies to Callus, but most likely it. The Mida Mini Tool does have the least range, but if you can kill something within 1 mag, it does have the highest damage per second within that 1 mag. So I would recommend just using an SMG there. I don't think the Mini Tool is any specialer than any other SMG, it's just more available than any other SMG. Datto will probably be coming out with a more comprehensive damage per second guide, but who knows? It might use Callus's fight, it might not use Callus's fight, there might be errors, so this is just another source so you don't have to rely on only one source. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe.